TIFU by not correcting my neighbor when he thought I was a doctor. This all started a few months ago when I met my new neighbor. He's a nice guy, in his mid-50s, a retired car salesman, and very chatty. One day, while we were making small talk, he asked what I do for a living. I actually work at a hospital, but I'm not a doctor. Over the years, I've learned to keep my job description vague because the moment you mention healthcare, people tend to share every ailment they've ever had or get defensive about their eating habits. So I simply said, "Oh, I work down at the hospital in the medical field." Harmless, right? Apparently not. For context, I live in a house that looks nice from the street. It's big and stately, but I inherited it from a wealthy grandparent. I'm not rich. The driveway is cracked, half my gutters are barely hanging on, and the lawn is always in some state of almost mowed. But to someone driving by, I can see how it might scream doctor money. Fast forward a few weeks, my neighbor and I were talking about cars. He used to sell them, so I asked what he thought about a certain model. He laughed and said, "Well, just because you can afford it on a doctor's salary doesn't mean you should buy something flashy." I chuckled, ready to correct him, but then he got a call. Later, I told my wife that I think the neighbor thinks I'm a doctor. We both laughed and decided to let it ride. It became our little inside joke. I figured he'd eventually hear, through the grapevine, that I'm not a doctor, so no big deal. A little while later, he called one evening. He mentioned that another neighbor had fallen and hit her head, asking if she should go to the doctor. I thought it was just a normal neighbor check-in, so I said, "Yeah, she should probably get checked out just in case it's a concussion." I didn't realize it at the time, but that confirmed in his mind that I was indeed making a house call by phone. From there, it escalated, slowly at first. "Hey, do you think this looks bad?" he'd ask, sending me photos. "Are you allowed to write me a prescription for this? What's the best over-the-counter thing for acid reflux?" Each time, I'd dance around it, saying things like, "Sorry, I can't help you with that," or, I'm not sure, you should have your doctor take a look at that." I tried to be as neutral as possible, thinking he'd eventually catch on. I probably should have just set the record straight, but I missed the point where it would have been easy to correct him. Instead, my vague answers only reinforced his belief that I was some kind of humble physician trying to avoid liability. A different neighbor later told me that my neighbor said, "He's so busy being a doctor, he doesn't have time to even fix his house or mow his lawn." My neighbor found this just as amusing as my wife and I did, and he didn't say anything either. At this point, it's been months. As far as I know, he still thinks I'm Dr. Bigman, the neighborhood doctor living in the big house with the bad lawn. I know I'll eventually have to tell him the truth, especially before the next HOA party. Heaven forbid someone has a heart attack and he comes to me for help, only for me to break it to him that I'm just a humble healthcare worker.